Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen. Today we are delving into the roadmap and what Cloud Imperium are currently working on for the persistent universe. So features that end between now and September are our focus here, that Cloud Imperium have sort of started on, and the various feature teams are going to be completing over the coming months. Now, this list isn't potentially fully exhaustive and extensive, because Cloud Imperium do sometimes obscure features for reveals, like CitizenCon. There are also various unannounced features and vehicles, 5 in fact, being completed between now and September. So we're going to see them turning up during Fleet Week 3.19, 3.20, CitizenCon, Intergalactic Aerospace Expo 4.0. It's also worth mentioning that even though the roadmap tracker may show a feature sort of being scheduled to be completed in a particular month, doesn't mean, even if everything's been successful, that it's going to be fully finished then. It may need to go into the Squadron 42 sort of dev branch to be then refined, to actually made into gameplay. It might require some other downstream feature teams to work on it. However, it is at the very least a very good indication of what's coming in the short to medium term and what Cloud Imperium are very much working on now. But conversely, a lot of these features will be turning up during the year, I would expect. So, April. Things that are finishing off in April. We've got cave archetypes, expanding the experience of traversing caves by creating more variety and developing new challenges. They're also improving the setup of caves so they can sort of more easily and more efficiently create future caves. Now, we do also know that Cloud Imperium are working on a load of new biomes for caves, so like there will be ice caves and all this sort of jazz. They've just added sand caves, but they're obviously going to keep on updating their sort of tools for making these caves and the modular blocks and pieces that they're sort of made out of and materials they use for them as they sort of go. RSI links that luxury alternative to the Urza rover, and that should be finished during this month. We know it's going to be turning up in 3.19. May. Some features that are planned to end in May. Seated item handling. This feature will add the ability for players and NPCs to use items or smaller weapons while seated in a passenger seat of a vehicle or ship. This is really important because that means you can have someone on the back of the Dragonfly shooting. Pew, 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 pew. You can have someone in your Star Citizen Warthog or any ground vehicle, shall we say. I always compare all ground vehicles that sort of carry troops that have guns mounted on them to the Warthog from Halo. Obviously, the Tumbril Cyclone being the most Warthoggy of all vehicles. So having players be able to shoot from the passenger seats is pretty important, pretty useful. It makes me feel significantly less vulnerable while driving around or being driven around. Aerodynamic control surfaces is another feature, hopefully can be completed during May. Ships with control surfaces will be able to use them in atmospheres to aid their maneuverability. This will allow for improved performance from ships that have weak maneuvering thrusters in atmosphere and bring new depth to aerodynamic flight in-game. This sort of goes further with the flight model to make atmospheric flight a lot more interesting, and obviously they want to have it so that you use fuel, you burn fuel while you're in an atmosphere and you can't support the sort of your ship just hovering for too long, and this is the steps towards that, I suppose. Something else being finished in May is Mop and Bucket, enabling support for Janitor AI to use multiple tools in either hand. We know that this was wanted for Squadron 42, but they're going to want to clear up the landing zones and ships and other areas from sort of trash and things like that are left from persistent entity streaming, from players just dropping off like random trash, whether it be food items, whether it be medical gowns, whatever. People are messy. Monsters, you monsters. June! So what's happening in June? Additional derelict settlements with both gameplay and social elements spread throughout the Stanton Wilderness using the Rastar tool. So we know that they've been building sort of settlements out of scrap. I say scrap, out of derelict ships, I should say, and lots and lots of pieces of those derelict ships have been sort of made into different housing and areas for these interesting landing zones. So expect this to be quite expansive, at least eventually. Actor status tier 2. Actor status looks at a variety of new elements such as hygiene, NPC status tracking, multiple bytes, DNA integrity, medical insurance, cybernetic limbs, and cloning. These are all big things. I mean, even hygiene, really. So hygiene, I suspect you will need to use a shower slash toilet slash anything in that sort of category to clean your character, or your character will start to get covered in dirt or whatever on their spacesuit, which people will comment on. Medical insurance and cloning, that's death of a spaceman stuff, that's mortality of your character, that's super important for the game. And those things coming, and the sort of side effects from dying, potentially having sort of cybernetic limbs and that sort of stuff, it's just, yeah, kind of cool. But also terrifying. You won't have to worry about permanently losing stuff until the game launches fully anyway, so there's going to be these resets regularly, and you're not going to lose your sort of ships and that sort of jazz. I believe that will just get transferred to your new character. In the early implementation of this, I will be interested to see how it all works. Outpost, Homestead, Independent and Outlaw, a small home for AI to live and shelter in. They consist of a central hub and a few optional internal and exterior modules. They provide the basic necessities to support a small group of people for an indefinite amount of time. Sliding. This feature will introduce a new traversal method for players, allowing them to traverse short distances by sliding along the floor. This will add a new element to combat situations. Assumedly, this is much harder to do in heavy armor and much easier to do in light armor, and maybe there's going to be some sort of suits of armor that are better at it than others beyond that. New interdiction scenarios, adding new variations and difficulty levels for interdiction scenarios that players will come across while quantum traveling. So more interest, more sort of side missions, more chances for you to be stopped by security, or by cargo ships requesting help, or by pirates, or maybe lots of other little events too. Swimming Tier 0, creating basic functionality for the player to be able to swim across the surface of bodies of water, including related features such as entering, exiting, and drowning. Includes support for hazardous liquids that can damage or kill players and other characters. We do know that there's going to be some forms of water and underwater gameplay, a little bit of underwater exploration, we believe, and I think some ships will be able to sort of float on water, so they're working on all this at the moment. There may be some more boat-focused things as well. We saw some features like that being worked on for Squadron 42. Interested to see how this is all implemented. MFD rework. So they're going to both be building the ship MFDs with the new building blocks tech, as well as completely redesigning them in an effort to make them more customizable, better matched up to ship aesthetics, and better at serving gameplay for each ship. Vehicle tractor beams. Implementing tractor beams attached to ships, either remotely operated or turret-like attachments, and this will allow players to move and tow bigger objects, including other ships. So this, very much looking forward to. Sort of the work they currently have planned ends in June for that, so I'm expecting to see it maybe as part of the 3.19 branch, maybe as 3.20, so I'll have to wait and see. Weapon misfire and wear, adding the potential for certain weapons to misfire or malfunction depending on various factors. We do believe that this is going to sort of propagate into items eventually as well, as part of sort of the engineering and resource management gameplay. Flak ammunition. This new damage type triggers on proximity or exploration, causing a concentrated burst of shrapnel to damage targets in an area. Distortion propagation. Further work on this damage type to allow correct propagation into systems. This makes the location of the impact much more important, as powered items closer to the impact will begin to suffer more severely. This will fulfill the original vision they had for distortion weapons that they already have in-game, and those that they've got planned for the future. We know that the Crusader Spirit looks like it's going to be finishing its work, at least as what it looks like, with the A1, C1, and E1. So that's the bombing variants, the standard cargo multi-role variant, and the person transport variant. I'm thinking that the C1 may very well replace my Cutlass Black as my go-to everyday ship. Cutting Tier 2, all the back end and tech tasks related to updating the cutting feature for the multi-tool that will be used in future locations and mission updates. The continued development of the existing multi-tool technology will allow players to cut through specific objects. This will primarily include the ability to freeform cut on specific surfaces, so this can be used partly for salvage or to bypass locks, get through vents, things like that. Lots and lots of different reasons to use the cutting tool. Asteroid facilities, adding new asteroid facilities to the persistent universe, handcrafted traversable areas offering different gameplay opportunities both in the interior and exterior of asteroids. That sounds awesome. Additional gameplay area that will be used for missions and various other bits. fantastic. July has a couple of features that look like they're going to be wrapping up. Bounty Hunting version 2, enabling players to track criminals via a mobiGlass security app linked to distress beacons, comm arrays, air traffic control systems, cameras, and NPC informants. This will rely on various new back-end tech, including virtual AI, the NPC scheduler, and security service. Really important things here with the dynamic universe and tracking those AI and having them operate. Expanding bounty hunting out like this sounds awesome, but we have to wait and see how it sort of manifests fully. Underground facilities, adding new underground facilities to the game, traversable areas offering gameplay opportunities in corporate industrial environments. Now, some of this stuff is ending in July, but don't expect it to be the full stuff that Cloud Imperium have been talking about during CitizenCon last year and more recently. So expect more underground facilities, more modules, and steps towards these giant underground facilities, but they're not going to be the huge underground structures that we've seen. It's just steps towards them. August, some work wrapping up then. Virtual AI service, a service that drives the logic of virtual AI, the go-between of subsumption AI and quanta AI. So this is obviously very important for bounty hunting, sort of expanding out as well. So they're going to have more features there, but they want to get this dynamic universe sim sorted with the AI, the NPCs flying around and doing a load of stuff in this like living, breathing universe that we happen to also exist in. ATC service, the logic for air traffic control is handled separately on the dedicated game servers. As they move closer to the reality of server meshing, the logic for air traffic control needs to transition to a separate service. Pyro space stations, so they're adding small rundown rest stop stations to the Pyro system, which will provide basic services and use limited interiors. People that are worried that, oh my god, there's not going to be any way to refuel, rearm, or repair. Yeah, there will be. There's going to be some limited stations with limited facilities. Obviously, they're controlled by gangs, so some of them might not like you, and they might be relatively expensive. NPC Scheduler Service. The NPC Scheduler is meant to add and remove NPCs to the game, dynamically spawning them in and out of the verse based on NPC archetype, maximum number of NPCs in a given area, the probabilities of those NPC archetypes. Again, this is all connected to the virtual AI service and that dynamic universe sim. September. So this is sort of like the last month we're going to talk about at this stage, but there's quite a lot that seems to be wrapping up here. Assumedly, they're going to be wanting to wrap it up because they want to show some bits at CitizenCon. Some will be for 3.20, some will be for 4.0. You've got the Origin X1 wrapping up. That's what it looks like in September. That luxury hover bike from Origin. I think people have been waiting for that for quite a while. New missions, salvage contracts. So this is interesting because we know that at least the initial sort of offering is going to be in 3.19 in May, but obviously there's a lot more work to do with these salvage contract missions. The feature reads, with more civilian access to salvage ships, contract brokers are offering salvage jobs for derelicts around the Grange Points and Stanton. These brokers charge a fee for their services, so this will require some buy-in, but the contractors are free to keep any salvaged material for resale. We know there's the potential for sort of PvP or outlaw missions where you get this like salvage area before someone else and you have to try and salvage as much of it as you can, or you have to chase people off. There might be other people salvaging when you turn up, so you have to either chase them off or destroy them, but then their friends might come along, so sort of be aware of that. Security Network V1. Full implementation of the security system includes other features for which players may need security or clearance levels, such as doors and elevators. I think this is going to tie into the permission systems for ships as well in the future, allowing you to go, bam, I'm going to make someone a pilot my ship, which means they've got access to this terminal and this room to sleep in, or they're going to be a turret gunner, so they've got access to these doors and this turret and a room to sleep in, but nothing else. Probably tie into that, but obviously there's a huge amount of other uses for locked doors and interesting mission gameplay. Building interiors, creating gameplay-focused layouts to fill the interiors of various buildings in landing zones. We know that they want to expand out the buildings of Lawville 2.0, have the interiors for there, have the interiors for lots of buildings at lots of different landing zones, and the sort of cities and that sort of jazz. Huge amount of gameplay opportunity there. Really looking forward to it. They've got the Ayapoa Santok Yai, that medium Xi'an fighter. I actually thought that was going to be finished a lot sooner than September, but it is what it is. Bug fixing and tech debt. So general bug fixing and optimization for all game features and back-end tech. That's sort of like a constant sprint admittedly, but they've got a load of that wrapping up in September, it seems. Artificial gravity, implementing the dedicated functionality for items controlling the gravity per room for ships, outposts, and stations. This also includes player controls as part of engineering gameplay. So this is interesting. This is all feeding into the resource management system, which is also looking to complete in September, at least the sort of first iteration of it. This system will handle resources for stations, settlements, cities, and all other locations. It will also unlock engineering station gameplay for ships, letting players manage power, CPU, fuel, shields, coolant, etc. And we know it's tied to fires and damage control and the circuitry of ships. Huge amount of stuff. It's sort of tied into resource management, physicalization of components, loads of stuff. With these big systems as well, I'm not sure if they're going to turn up in the patch that they're proximate to, or if it's going to take another 3 months before they jump into the game. How much refinement will they need? We don't know. Quantum simulation, revealed at CitizenCon 2019. The quantum simulation will serve as the background economy for Star Citizen. Thousands of unseen simulated entities will carry out trade, commerce, piracy, and security to populate and inform other game systems. So yeah, that's all feeding into all those other features we talked about with the NPC scheduler and the virtual AI, even bounty hunting, all that sort of jazz, making that dynamic universe simulation sort of come to life. The RSI Polaris, that actually starts work this month in April and looks like it's going to end in September. So a lot of people are really excited to see this sort of Corvette ship in game. It's a lot of people want to use it as like a base ship. It is very multi-role. It is very powerful combat. It's got a load of big old torpedoes, but room for a ship, and going to be a fantastic sort of mid to high tier mission running ship for sure. Persistent streaming and server meshing. Proprietary server meshing and persistence technology will allow Star Citizen to scale up its shared universe across game servers. Eventually, this technology will allow for thousands of players to coexist in the verse. Once the first version of this is implemented, the number of servers and players will increase over successive versions. Really interesting to see this here, because we do know that Cloud Imperium are basically saying that Pyro is a priority at the moment, Pyro and jump points getting in the game. Obviously, the next biggest priority for them is persistent streaming and server meshing. At this stage, I don't expect the potential for static server meshing being near completion, but it's going to take a long time to get server meshing sort of refined in game. Look what the problems they had with persistent entity streaming sort of 4 months after when they wanted to get it in game. It's still sort of not refined. The patch they implemented it in is only now, just recently, working, at least for a lot more people. But you want persistence, you want some other cool stuff? Persistent hangars. Work that grants players the ability to have their own persistent hangars. This will also bring changes to the cargo gameplay loop by allowing players to pack their grids manually. And persistent hubs. Work that grants players the ability to have their own persistent hubs. So more customization for places that you sort of go to, that you live at, that you store things at. We're not sure at the level of customization you're going to have in the first implementations of these, but really great to see them back in game and on that roadmap. Miscellaneous support includes general support for other teams, updating existing features, or small tasks that don't necessitate a full entry. It's cool to see that as part of like technical debts and just making the game generally more playable. Lockable containers. Lockable containers will add the ability for designers to lock entities with either physical or electronic locks, which can be opened with a key or forced open via cutting, destroying, or hacking the lock. Life Support Tier 0, this is sort of connected to the resource management system. It implements the first iteration of onboard life support in ships, which entails a ship component that generates air when turned on, and the management of said life support component within the vehicle loadout manager. This also means that really, over a medium period of time, that ships will have maximum crew capacities, because otherwise you won't be able to generate enough oxygen appropriately for them, if you see what I mean. Which is an interesting one, especially during ship boardings, because I suppose if you're boarding a ship for too long and fighting for too long with a large group of people, then that could cause problems with life support. Boom! That's it for your roadmap update and look at what's being completed between now and September, or at least work that Cloud Imperium have already started working on that finishes in September, because there are a few other little ones like incendiary ammo as well. That's going to be worked on, I think, from May to June, and plasma ammo as well. I'm actually quite looking forward to all those damage types, but I'm interested to know what you think. Are you expecting to see lots of these features sort of at CitizenCon, or come into the game later this year with 3.19, 3.20, 4.0? There are obviously some pretty massive features there if they can get them implemented with the resource management system, with the potential for server meshing, which is an odd one, seeing that they basically said, look, server meshing might take us a bit more time. I suppose even if they do get it completed, as I said earlier, they need to then refine it. It can take a long time to get that actually in our hands. Are you looking forward to the dynamic universe simulation starting to come online with those NPCs and AI and a lot more interesting things like in this living, breathing universe? What do you think we will see by the end of the year? I am genuinely really excited for all the stuff that's coming up this year. Even if Star Citizen only gets half of those features in-game, then I still think it's going to be a massive year for Star Citizen. Admittedly, after a bit of a poor start with 3.18's terrible release. However, 3.18.1 seems to be working pretty well. 3.18.2 looks like it's going to be working even better. And 3.19, along with Fleet Week, yes, that's starting to push into some really interesting stuff coming online. And if the game is all stable, yeah, that's put it in a great position for some awesome releases for the rest of the year. But whatever your thoughts, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. The Tobii Eye Tracker 5 is on sale until the 19th of April. This gives you native high-precision head and eye tracking in Star Citizen. Very cool for general immersion, for combat both in ship or on foot. They are absolutely fantastic pieces of kit, and both Zin and I have one. Use the links below to grab one for 15% off or to find out more.
Little Nord Riding Hood was on her way to Grandma's house. Upon arriving at her house, she called, "Grandma, are you home?" "Yes, dear. I'm on my laptop in bed." Upon seeing her grandma, she exclaimed, "Oh, Grandma, what long fingers you have." "Oh, the better to browse the internet, my dear." "Oh, Grandma, what powerful VPN protection you have." "Oh, the better to browse safely, my dear." "Oh, Grandma, what big eyes you have." "Oh, the better to enjoy my greater access to the sites I want to visit, my dear." "But seriously, get NordVPN or I will eat you." The moral of this story is that there are some great deals on NordVPN, and using it can improve your internet privacy, safety, and give you more access to the content you want to see. Get it from the links below. Every month we have a ship giveaway for April 2023. It's for a Drake Vulture, the light salvage ship. This will enable you to take to the stars, find wrecks and strip them, as well as craft some useful items with its onboard dispensary. It comes with lifetime insurance and a Star Citizen game package as well. All you need to get into the game, and all you have to do to be in for a chance of winning that, is comment on any of my videos made during April. Also, please bear in mind that there are scammers about in YouTube. If you see in the comments below someone trying to get you to go onto Telegram, or someone not using my main account, which is the account I'm making videos on now, then they are a scammer pretending to be me or someone else, and just be safe on YouTubes. If you would like to further support the channel, please consider subscribing. You can become a Patreon, you can use the YouTube join button as well. That goes an extra mile to help support us and enables us to produce Star Citizen content every day. And that's down to you guys helping support us, so genuinely, thank you from the bottom of my little BoredGamer heart.